Hi everyone, this is our final lesson. We're gonna talk about rewilding and conservation, and then we will conclude with some considerations about this whole seminar about environment and society. But first thing first, I want to share with you some information regarding your final. So let me share with you um, this page from Canvas. Okay, great. So, what about your final? Now you can find all the information you need for your final essay. Um, what I'm asking you is an essay between 1,500 2,000 words. That should be formatted with 12-point font, double spaced, and with one margin, one of margins. The paper style, we have some information here that you need. The paper should be structured as an essay with an introductory paragraph, a clear thesis statement, a well-developed body, and a concluding paragraph. So what I'm saying here is that I want an introduction to tell me what is your thesis? What are you going to talk about? What are you trying to explain? What are you trying to argue for? Then you will have the body in which you will develop your thesis, and then you need to conclude. And in the conclusion, you will summarize what you have been, what was the subject of your essay. So the conclusion and introduction should connect very well. And should make sense if I read the entire body of your paper, of your essay. Sorry. Your thesis statement should be specific and clear. So, yes, I said before, I should provide a roadmap for your argument. So, I really want to have in mind when I read your introduction what I'm supposed to read in the following lines. A bibliography is not necessary since all the references should come from the five assigned readings. So basically, you need to use at least five authors that we have encountered during this course. So don't be worried about using a bibliography. I don't need a final bibliography. I count that you will develop your argument starting from at least five authors that we have encountered. For example, Eileen Christ, or for example, Ellen Kopnina, or Deep Ecology, Peter Singer, so on and so forth. You will find your argument, and you will find the authors that you need to support your arguments. Yes, one thing that is very important is that you will take time to check for the grammar and the style. So try to avoid errors for sure. We won't be severe about typos, but you need to overall check very carefully the grammar and the syntax, because however we are at the university level, and we need you to provide us with something well written, not just in terms of contents, but also in terms of style. And this is a great test for you. Is a great occasion to show your skills and to try to perfect them by doing this exercise. So take it mostly as an exercise to truly be capable to deliver something starting from the knowledge that you're supposed to have gained throughout this class. So let's move on with the subject of today. Today we are going to talk about rewilding. What is rewilding? I gave you to read the Rewilding Charter, the Global Rewilding Charter, and you can see basically on the Global Rewilding Charter that you have on Canvas all the information about what is rewilding overall. But to be more clear on the subject, I want to share with you the page of an organization I've been working for, especially in the Italian site in central Italy, on the Apennines. And this organization is called Rewilding Europe. There are many organizations to rewild, for example, Patagonia, to rewild North America, etc. But I'm sharing with you the one of Rewilding Europe, not only because I've been part of this project, working with the brown bears in central Italy, but also because I think that at the end of the day, it's one of the best websites to understand a bit more about rewilding. So I'm going to share with you also this. Share screen, and you can take a look to this website. Okay, making Europe a wilder place. Let's go to check what is rewilding. What is rewilding? There are different interpretation of what is rewilding, but I think that one very institutional interpretation is the one probably not the most radical, by far not the most radical, but one that is kind of popular is the one of rewilding proposed by Rewilding Europe. Rewilding is a progressive approach to conservation, and this is already something that you need to keep in mind. If conservation is about to prevent extinction of species, degradation of ecosystems, disappearance of a population of certain species, of biocultural diversity, rewilding is a more progressive approach to conservation, a more radical one. It's about letting nature take care of itself, enabling natural processes to shape land and sea, repair damaged ecosystems, and restore degraded landscapes. Through rewilding, wildlife's natural rhythms create wilder, more biodiverse habitats. So then you can see rewilding is about nature's own way, bringing back wildlife, ensuring well-being, and delivering for the future. Everything that you can find on the page of Rewilding Europe, you can use it for your final, you can use it for future projects, and if you need to know about North American or South American or other places, just Google or ask directly to me or Anna. We will provide you with more sources if this is what you need for your final, or simply because you want to integrate them in your discussion, the weekly discussion that will be about conservation, extinction, rewilding. There are principles of rewilding, there are reasons for rewilding, and there is a lot that you can learn in a very not boring way, full of images, full of info boxes. So I think that is a great place to start if you want to know a bit more about rewilding. So please go and check the page Rewilding Europe. Going back to our subject, let's try to keep rewilding as short as possible. Basically, why rewilding? Rewilding is the idea of giving back wilderness, giving back something to something else. Why it is important? Rewilding as a term is becoming more and more popular in the 90s, thanks to the activism of Dave Foreman, but also thanks to the work, the more theoretical and sound work of Michael Soulet and Reed Noss. And then nowadays, rewilding is becoming popular for many projects. And if you are curious about activities in North America, I think that a great starting point is the work of Christina Heisenberg, a native scholar that worked a lot with large carnivores in North America, from Montana to the territories of Canada. You can find a lot about brown bears, black bears, wolves, and pumas, etc. She's great in divulgating the importance of the trophic cascade, of the relation between large carnivores and their prey. And I think that she's a great scholar, and is a way to have a slightly different perspective from the one more institutional of Reed Noss and Michael Soulet. However, we are talking about giving something back. Why? Because conservation, as we have said before, is the effort to preserve, to keep something, to save something from degradation, from annihilation, from extinction. And we are trying to do conservation from a long time. it's more than 150 years since we started to talk about conservation. We started with John Muir, we started with Aldo Leopold, we started with the forestry management in North America, we started with the first establishment of national parks. I'm thinking about Yellowstone, I'm thinking about Yosemite. And the conservation started also as a movement, mostly from rich people, rich European people, and sometimes also involved displacement of local communities of indigenous people for the sake of preserving something that we. And what was the aim of this preservation most of the time was our hunting ground for richer people and nobles, like the national park in which I used to live in Italy, the Gran Paradiso National Park. It was the hunting reserve of one of the last kings of Italy. On the other hand, there are projects for the sake of the beauty and the protection of something that should have some kind of spiritual value. And I'm thinking about Yosemite, and I'm thinking about John Muir and his role in promoting the conservation of something that was kind of eco-spiritual. And I think that this is really important. Yet, despite generation of conservationists and conservation effort, you should already know it. We are living in the sixth mass extinction of biodiversity. Sure, some people are arguing that maybe we should be careful in talking about sixth mass extinctions, but the vast majority of the data now are available are telling us that climate change is not the only threat to biodiversity. There are many. There is pollution, ocean acidification, over-harvesting, so also poaching, but also illegal hunting. There is habitat loss. There are invasive species. There is human population growth, and consequential more usage of resources from humans that subtracts habitat and resources from non-humans, or consider non-humans as mere resources. So this is an important issue that is making, in a certain sense, conservation failing. And that's why conservation nowadays is trying to redirect. There are some conservationists like Paul Careva that are arguing for a kind of conservation that is no longer trying to preserve the intrinsic value of the existence of species, population, and ecosystem, but trying to preserve what can be preserved for the sake of human well-being, for all humanity, but just for the sake of human well-being. You should be aware of this kind of approach. You should know that this kind of approach is eradicated inside a very anthropocentric framework. One can say that is inside a human supremacist framework. And most of the time, you will see this combined with a certain kind of eco-modernist approach, very optimistic about the destiny of humanity as sort of God that perform the transformation of nature for the sake of its perfection and the perfection of humanity as a species that is unique, that is exceptional, etc. On the other hand, there are people, among them Ellen Kopnina. I gave you a paper over here to read for today, the one called Half Earth for People or More, that do not believe that this is enough, do not believe that this is the best case scenario. They still believe that humans, ecosystems, species, non-human individuals have or should have consideration and moral consideration for their own intrinsic values. And so what's the point of rewilding? What are we giving back? Rewilding, so giving back the wild. But what is wild? Wild, from an ancient roots of the Germanic and English language, means something free, something capable of self-determination. So what rewilding is implying is that we should give to non-human nature the possibility of self-determination, of being free from human control. Because right now, it's not just about human as one among many other species that is performing its own activities, but is something more. We could say, if we were talking about non-human natures, as we were talking about a human group, that right now non-human nature is living in a certain stage of slavery, of colonialism, of biopolicies, in which everything is strictly regulated by us, by our species. For sure, when I talk about us and when I talk about our species, I'm mostly talking about the Western culture, and I'm mostly talking about the industrial part of our society. Yet, if we keep the numbers in mind, we should take in mind that indigenous people are a minority on this planet. They've been pushed in the condition of being a minority. That's correct. On the other hand, the vast majority of people like now living on this planet, willy or nilly, are participating in global capitalism. Doesn't mean that they are victorious in this participation. Doesn't mean that they are having benefits for their participation, but they are also forced to participate in this system that requires population growth, requires consumption of more goods, require an economy that always needs more and more. And so more and more for humans, for the economic system, means intrinsically less and less for non-humans. And how can we make space for non-humans? Well, it's already too late for many authors. For many authors like Edward Wilson, very famous biologist, he recently passed away, but he was very provocative in saying that what we need to alter the sixth mass extinction, what we need to do if we want to stop, to prevent us as a species, but mostly as a global society, to be an asteroid for the whole biosphere, is to give back half Earth to other species, half Earth in which species can be wild again. What does it mean? Wild, that can self-determinate themselves by actually living their evolutionary life without us, without humans, without certain powerful humans to have the possibility to eradicate, extinguish them throughout by or via direct elimination or indirect threats like plastic pollution, for example, for albatrosses that are far away in some remote islands. You should know it because if you have read the article of Van Doren, you should know how much in the Anthropocene no one is safe from human activities, even in the most remote islands of the Pacific, for example. And so what can we do, what we should do, what we should think? These are open questions. Undoubtedly, it's provocative, the proposal of Edward Wilson. How can we make space for non-humans in a moment in which we are extinguishing them at the rate is 100 times, 1,000 times faster than the background rate of extinction that we were talking in the previous lesson? We could give them half of the globe, including the sea and including the some land and some sea. It could be possible, but how can we do it in a system, an economic system that requires more goods, more growth? We can think about decoupling. Is truly decoupling possible? Some eco-modernists think so, but at the state of the art right now, we don't have the evidence for such a thing. We could decouple some goods, but still, there is almost everything that we do as a materialistic impact on reality. The air we breathe, the food that we eat, the water that we need, the shelters that we need to shelter us from weather conditions, the need to insulate our homes, the need to cool our homes if we live in a place like Texas, and many other things require a lot of materials. And it's very difficult to think that a human society that is now used to constant growth in terms of good consumption, and that is already growing a lot in terms of population since at least 200 years, it's very difficult to think that we can accommodate space for half Earth. Still, I would suggest you to take a look to the website that started as a blog of Edward Wilson. Now is no longer, for sure, in the condition to work for it because he passed away recently. But many people took his legacy, and there is this Half Earth project, Edward Wilson Biodiversity Foundation. I share it with you. Why does protect? Whoa, go slowly. So this is the website of Half Earth project, and you can find different information that you may want to read to get a better understanding of why Edward Wilson and others were proposing and are proposing to give an enormous amount of space to other species. However, if you think about it, it makes sense. It makes perfectly sense because we are just one among many, many other species on this planet. We are just one tiny, tiny fragment, and yet we and the animals we use represent the vast majority of the mammals and vertebrates biomass on this planet, and this is an issue. It's an issue if we think that the city of New York weighs more than the entire fish that is now present in the oceans, or the fact that the technosphere, the amount of artificial goods that we have created, is now heavier than the biomass of the biosphere, or the fact that now there are more croplands than forests. All these are huge issues, and giving back half of the earth and rewild half of the earth is undoubtedly a provocative proposal, but one that maybe will determine the future of humanity. That's why I really suggest you to read the article of Helen Kopnina. I mean, you have to read it for this course, but I really suggest you read it also for your own life and your own understanding of this reality, because it analyzes some of the biggest critics toward the proposal for rewilding half of the earth, and tend to try at least to respond to those critics. I will mention you briefly which are those critics. Setting aside space for rewilding means to threaten vulnerable communities, that setting aside half of the earth will cause a reinforcement of the idea of a dichotomy between non-humans and humans on one side, non-humans on the other side. Then talking about humanity again, like we have seen with the Anthropocene, Capitolocene debates, is again a human generalization. Who are we? Who is the humankind that is always responsible for environmental degradation and ecocide? And the other one is the common population growth is not an issue. And population growth, as we have said, and as we have analyzed before, is actually an issue. Maybe is not the issue. I will suggest always to think about the plurality of causes, and never to think of problems like having just one causation, because this is a way of thinking that allow too much simplicity and reductionism in a world that is super complex. So undoubtedly, I'm not going to tell you which are the answers of Helen Kopnina, not in details, but for sure, for example, I can tell you that I can give you some hints of what she replies in the paper. She said that, for example, setting aside vulnerable communities is not something that happens primarily because of conservation, but on the other hand, it happens more and more frequently because of industrialism as an ideology. So there is a lot of displacement already going on, and it's not just human displacement, that is also non-human displacement. Both the most vulnerable humans and the most vulnerable non-humans are victims of this displacement, and it's because the kind of activities that we are developing because of global capitalism, because of a very consumptive society and a very consumptive economy. Then, for sure, I will not dig into the population growth, because we had a lesson about population growth and you could read a lot about it, or just going on the website of Population Matters, for example. So you have all the material about it. The humanity generalization, it's not a generalization. You can make distinguo. You can say that indigenous people are less less of a danger for non-humans, but yet we are like idealizing indigenous people, and we are reinforcing anthropocentric and human-centric perspective every time we think about using the indigenous people card to remove basically our duties toward the non-humans. Instead, for Kopnina, we need to think better than this. We need to try to protect indigenous people, protect and value what they are doing and what is their knowledge and their knowledge of the land, etc., while at the same time not by default excluding the care for non-humans and their right to exist. Then the dichotomy human and non-human, it's a dangerous dichotomy, because from one side we can go beyond the dichotomy in a way that favor humans in the sense of favoring their anthropocentric instances by saying that we are nature, and so because we are nature and we are cool and we are godlike and we are powerful and we have the control of the planet and we are nature, there are no issue with us misbehaving toward other species, because there cannot be anything like a misbehavior in nature, because everything that happens in nature is about a species performing at its best to try to survive, to try to use the planet, etc. So there is this kind of natural justification. On the other hand, there are philosophies like deep ecology, like ecofeminists, they say, yes, we are part of nature, we should go against duality and dualism, and we should do it, but for the sake of recognizing our relationship and our entanglement with the non-humans, and therefore in the moment in which we recognize that there is no distinction, we do it by supporting their right to exist. And so if we go toward this kind of going beyond dichotomies, we can do it by trying to rewild half of the earth. And try to rewild half of the earth doesn't mean to exclude humans entirely from places in which other species should be, but it means to give half of the earth in which species can exist without being taught mostly in terms of resources for our own sake. Okay. Lastly, I want to say that rewilding, which are the rewilding three pillars, in at least in the way they have been popularized. First, that we need corridors. They are called the three C's. Corridors. We need to have more connectivity between ecosystems and more connectivity between natural areas. Then we need cores, huge core areas, and the idea of rewilding half of the earth is about creating enough space for species to thrive. Because if you have tiny islands of conservation, you will have less access than having big ones that are well connected. Then the last one is our carnivores, because now we know that ecology is not just a bottom-up process in which the condition of the soil and the climate and the vegetation determine everything that lives. But we know that predators, in the way in which they shape the distribution of herbivores, the behavior of herbivores, etc., they can actually have a top-down effect on the whole ecosystem. That's why we know now, we use a lot inside rewilding and now inside conservation the concept of keystone species, the species that determine the most the changes inside an ecosystem. For example, the classical example are the wolves in Yellowstone. Reintroduced in the 95, the wolves in Yellowstone were able to shape the way of behaving of the wapiti deer, and because of the eggs change in behavior, there were a lot of positive effects for many other species, for the beavers, for the trouts, for the vegetation, the riparian vegetation, for mesocarnivores, etc. So it is an example. Yet we should consider nowadays that we think very well that there are not just carnivores, carnivorous and predatorial forms of ways of being a keystone species, but for example, the beaver is a keystone species, the whale is a keystone species, the elephant is a keystone species. So there are many different keystone species, and we need to understand how every species entangles with other species in a way in which is much more complex than simply than a simple linear way, but there are many cascade effects. So that's pretty much everything you should know at the very basic level about rewilding, just to have an idea of what is the conversation all about. Then the rewilding is passive, can be active, can be like letting an ecosystem go by itself, or can be like introducing surrogate species to try to kickstart ecological processes. Is about bringing back animals where they have been wiped out, for example, the wolves in Yellowstone, but also this debate that there is now to bring back carnivores, large carnivores, to the UK, to the Scottish Highlands. I participated personally with social surveys. I participated to the introduction of the Eurasian beaver to the Scottish Highlands. So there are many initiatives, and I do believe that rewilding is one of those words and one of those concepts that will determine very strongly our future and the debate about ecology and about politics of the next future of the 21st century. Having said that, we're arrived at the end of this short but intense course on environment and society. We have faced many different topics. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to teach to you. I'm really happy that you have been my first students for UNT, and I'm really happy to have developed this course, having the possibility to be creative, to move also beyond our manuals. And because our manual is very interesting, but undoubtedly there are many things that I wanted to add, and I was able to do it. And you were great in the discussion board, in the participation, etc. So it was even more stimulating for me to produce this course. I'm really happy so far, and I can't wait for reading your final essays. Don't be worried about our judgment. Try to stick to your guidelines. You just need to follow your guidelines, and you express your opinion in a constructive and polite way as usual. I'm sure that every one of you will pass this class. I'm sure that every one of you will make a great contribution to this discussion. So thanks a lot again, and good luck with the final.